who knows who broke, everyone has a theory.
I know.
Who broke it up?
John.
John did.
Yeah.
And he tried to pin it all on you.
For decades, the world has argued about one thing. Who really ended the Beatles? Fans blamed Yoko. Historians blamed business. Documentaries blamed pressure, fame, money, and creative differences. But when Paul McCartney was asked, directly, bluntly, who shattered the most beloved band in history, he said one word. Not a theory, not an excuse, just a name. And he didn't hesitate. But what he reveals next flips the entire story upside down, because Paul admits things that make the breakup way more complicated, way more human, and far more heartbreaking than the version we all grew up with. If you think you already know what happened, this will change your mind. The question that haunted the world. For half a century, Beatles fans obsessed over the same mystery. Why did the biggest band on Earth fall apart at the height of their power? The rumors became legends. Yoko's fault. Paul was controlling. John was drifting away. George was tired of being overshadowed. Brian Epstein's death cracked the foundation. Business chaos made friendship impossible. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had a villain. But then came Paul's interview with Howard Stern. A moment that sliced straight through 50 years of speculation. Howard asked, "Who ended the Beatles?" Paul didn't blink. John. Just John. Except, when you look closer, this truth comes with layers. Layers of pain, resentment, misunderstanding, and moments all four Beatles handled badly. And Paul knows it. When John walked in and dropped a bomb. Let's rewind to September 1969. No reporters. No fans. No press conference. Just the four Beatles in a private meeting. John walks in and says, "I'm leaving the group." That's it. Not a negotiation. Not a discussion. A decision. Paul describes the moment today with a strange mix of sadness and clarity. John was already deep into a new phase of his life, emotionally, spiritually, artistically. And Yoko Ono was right there beside him. Not controlling him, but inspiring him in ways Paul admits he couldn't compete with. And Paul also reveals something wild. John's manager told him to hide the breakup so they could secure a business deal first. So John leaves. The band is already done. But nobody is allowed to say it publicly. Fast forward to April 1970. Paul announces his solo album. A journalist asks if the Beatles are done. Paul answers honestly. Boom. He becomes the villain. Even though John had quit 7 months earlier. Paul admits the things he did wrong too. Here's where Paul gets brutally honest, and where the story becomes much more human. Because he admits, he threw Ringo out of his house during the tension. He was simmering with jealousy and frustration. He felt unheard. He felt abandoned. And yes, he resented Yoko for being in the studio. Paul says it in such a relatable way. It was shocking seeing her sitting on my amp. Not because she was Yoko. Not because she was a woman. But because the Beatles' recording studio was their inner sanctum. A creative space where even girlfriends and wives didn't hang around. Four young men who had been glued together since they were teenagers suddenly had to deal with a new energy in the room. And none of them communicated properly. They swallowed it. Let it fester. Let it turn into passive-aggressive tension. Until it finally exploded. The moment Ringo knocked on Paul's door. This is one of the most painful scenes Paul ever described. It's 1970. The Beatles are split behind closed doors, but the public doesn't know yet. Paul has his first solo album ready. Then he hears a knock on the door. It's Ringo, holding a letter from John and George. The message? Do not release your solo album yet. We want Let It Be to come out first. Paul breaks at this point in the story. Not angry, wounded. He remembers thinking, after everything, now my friends send Ringo as a messenger to order me around. So Paul did something he later laughed about but still regrets. He threw Ringo out of the house. Literally. And Ringo, the most peaceful Beatle, had to walk away with the letter still in his hands. The betrayal that led to lawsuits. Behind the scenes, the band was falling apart not just emotionally, but financially. John, George, and Ringo chose a new manager, Alan Klein. Paul refused and wanted Lee Eastman, his father-in-law, instead. Suddenly, it wasn't 4 musicians anymore. It was 3 against 1. Paul said it felt like watching the empire they built slip away. He had no choice. To protect himself, to protect the music, to protect Apple Corps, Paul sued the other 3 Beatles. Imagine suing the people who shaped your life. But Paul later said something beautiful. We were a family. Families fight. Families even break. But they come back, and he was right. The pettiest song war ever. Once they separated, the gloves came off. Paul wrote, "Too many people," throwing jabs at John and Yoko's activism. John fired back with, "How do you sleep?" A track so vicious Paul says he felt punched in the face. John mocked Paul's music, mocked his success, mocked yesterday, even joked about the "Paul is dead" conspiracy. Paul said those lyrics hurt deeply, not because they were clever, but because they came from his brother. His partner. The man he built the world with. But here's the twist. It didn't last. The anger faded faster than anyone realized. Their secret reconciliation. By 1974 and 1975, John and Paul were talking again. Laughing again. Jamming again. They even spent a night together watching Saturday Night Live, joking about the $3,000 reunion offer Lorne Michaels made on TV. John said, "Should we go? We could just show up." They didn't go, but for a moment, the magic was back. They were brothers again, and then, John was murdered in 1980. And this is where Paul says something that reveals the depth of their healing. The dreams. Paul says he still dreams about John. Not symbolic dreams. Real, vivid, detailed dreams, like the one where he grabs his Hofner bass and it's covered in sticky tape, and he and John laugh about it like nothing ever happened. Paul says, when someone you love visits you in your dreams, that's a gift. And then comes the moment that saved Paul from a lifetime of guilt. He says Yoko pulled him aside after John's death and told him, "He loved you." Paul said that single sentence changed everything. He carried it with him ever since. The real answer. So, who ended the Beatles? John started the breakup. Paul confirmed it publicly. George was exhausted. Ringo was frustrated. Business tore them apart. Life pulled them in different directions. There was no villain. Just 4 young men under unimaginable pressure, growing up faster than they could handle, and growing apart at the same time. But the ending isn't tragic, because before John died, they made peace. They forgave. They found each other again. Paul said it best. The Beatles broke up, but me and John didn't. If stories like this hit you straight in the heart, you're in the right place. This is Rock Fame Diaries, where we dig into the real stories behind the legends. The music, the memories, and the moments the world never forgets. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Rock Fame Diaries, signing out.